Hey y'all. Oops. Hey y'all, it's me again. I'm going to continue reading from my book, The Secret Lives of the First Ladies. Okay, here we go. Firebird. Julia saved her and Elise's lives on another occasion. While the couple was visiting Chicago in 1871, Mrs. Grant had a vision about a huge, terrifying bird with smoke billowing from its wings. Those Grants were preparing to make an appearance at a reception. Julia insisted they cancel and get the heck out of town. The Elises obliged and they left. Just in time to escape the Great Chicago Fire. Black and blue. Though Julia married a man opposed to slavery, she was slow to give up her reliance on the institution that had been such an integral part of her upbringing. In fact, while her husband was doing his part to defeat the Confederacy during the Civil War, Julia often traveled to see him, with her slaves in tow. Of course, while in free territory, she had the good sense to lease them. But it was only after the issue became a bit thorny for Elise's reputation that she gave them up altogether. Harebrained hostess. Like all first ladies who loved the job, Julia Grant was an avid entertainer. Her social function became legendary, not only for the 20 or 30-course meals prepared by an Italian chef, but also for the fact that all were welcome. Working class folks rubbed shoulders with some of the richest robber barons in the nation. But the First Lady had a rather lousy memory, a fault that can cause quite a bit of trouble at political functions. Names, opinions, voting records, and the like were hard for her to remember. As a result, she often had White House staffers strategically placed about her whose job was to whisper facts into her ears as important people approached to say hello. People who, of course, Julia often couldn't make out properly with their bad eyesight. Unfortunately, Ulysses didn't make it any easier on Julia enough to tease her. Or worse, fed her false information that could end in embarrassment. Frigid festivities. Grant's second inaugural ball in March 1873 was held in a makeshift structure built specifically for the occasion and aptly dubbed the Muslin Palace for its garish decor. Julia showed up in a truly gorgeous brocade gown made from material given her by the Emperor of Turn. Guard that resplendent as it was couldn't protect her from the cold, and Julia wasn't the only one serving. Ferdinand was unduly chilly. Many pargoes took off early for warmer lodgings, and those who remained skipped the punch and opted for coffee. The occasion took a tragic turn when, among the sitting kids bundled in shawls and overcoats, a woman fell to the floor. She had died from a bronchial condition exaggerated by the temperature. When a cigar is just a cigar. Julia had very few restrictions for her White House social gatherings, but one in which she enforced ruthlessly was no smoking. She hated tobacco smoke. An intriguing fact when you consider that she married one of the most ardent cigar aficionados in the country. There was always a bone of contention between Mr. and Mrs. Grant, and the latter was not above finding her husband's stash and simply throwing in the trash. She never succeeded in driving the point home, however, as evidenced by Ulysses' death from throat cancer. Chapter 16. Lucy Webb Hayes. August 28, 1831 through June 25, 1889. Married December 30th, 1852. So, just before New Year's Eve. Okay, nice. Presidential husband, Rutherford B. Hayes. Children, Richard Austin, Webb Cook, Rutherford Platt, Joseph Thompson, George Crook, Fanny Scott Russell, and Manning Force. Firstly, from 1877 to 1881. Astrological sign. Virgo, just like me. Yay! Religion, Methodist. Soundbite. Home missions seek to protect their own land from imported heathenism. Lucy Hayes banned alcohol, car play, and dancing from the White House. Even pool was out. The master's billiard room became a home for plants, so it became a greenhouse. Hey, nice. I guess for her. Lucy Webb Hayes became First Lady during an exciting time for American women. All across the country, they were taking charge of their careers, their right to vote, their education, and their drunken menfolk. And plenty of them looked to Lucy for guidance and leadership. But while Mrs. Hayes embodied much of what the nation was beginning to call the new woman, she was also content to act like the older variety, and stop short of becoming the revolutionary icon that so many of her fellow women urged her to be. Lucy was born the only daughter of 3 children in Chillicothe, I think that's how you say it, Ohio, to James Webb and Maria Cook. Her parents were devout temperance advocates, instilling in Lucy a lifelong suspicion of demon rule. They also instilled in her a desire for self-betterment and fortunately had the money to make it happen. James Webb, a successful physician, left his plenty of cash when he died of cholera in 1833, and much of it paid for Lucy's classes at Ohio Wesleyan, I think that's you say, I don't know, University in Cincinnati Wesleyan Female College. Her schooling covered not only the basics, literature, history, geography, etc., but also a large dose of methods, morality, in which self-discovery and discipline became a daily habit. Her religious teetotaling father would have been proud. She met fellow Hawaiian Rutherford B. Hayes in 1846 when she was a student at Ohio Wesleyan. But at 15, she was too young to start courting, even back then. I did not know that. The more you know. Woohoo! And their romantic association didn't begin until after they met again in 1850. So, 4 years later. During their engagement, Lucy had her first experiences with charitable work, helping impoverished families, a cause that have come to define her life. She and Rutherford married in 1852. While Rutherford set up his law practice in the years that followed, Lucy was busy with the domestic responsibilities that were the lot of every housewife. She also spent a great deal of time socializing with her family and in-laws, and began having children in November of 1853. But babies weren't the only things growing inside her. She was also developing ideas about the burgeoning women's movement and the cause of abolitionism. Her father had worked to free slaves and died an ardent opponent of the hated institution. Lucy had inherited those ideas, and now she began to take great interest in the Republicans, the first political party in America to directly take on slavery. Her enthusiasm was infectious, particularly to her husband. Rutherford began attending lectures with her and to consider a life in politics. But circumstances drove him to a very different sort of career change. At the outbreak of the Civil War, Rutherford became an officer of Ohio troops. For the next 4 years, he saw more than his fair share of action and got wounded on several occasions. Life wasn't a walk in the park for Lucy either, who found herself, like so many soldiers' wives, balancing family with worries over her husband's welfare. She went to be with him when she could, which on at least one occasion meant renting out their Cincinnati home. Students made a uniform tended to the wounded, including her husband, and did some of it within cannon shot of Confederate armies. Under such dire circumstances, she continued to have children. 2 sons, both of whom were dead before the 3rd year. Holy hell. At the end of the war, Rutherford's battlefield heroics were rewarded with a seat in the United States Congress. Lucy went to visit him in 1866. It was never the same again. The heated political issues of the time electrified her, giving her an expensive, well-educated brain a feast of delectable debates to chew on. To her growing list of progressive Christians, she had to play to free slaves. Like all radical Republicans, she was sickened by President Andrew Johnson's anemic Reconstruction program, which seemed hardly sympathetic to the realities of African Americans. Lucy was comfortable in the cauldron of contention over these and other issues and felt as if politics had become her home. Rutherford felt the same way and went on to become governor of Ohio in 1868. His wife, galvanized by the fire of war, tantalized the potential of political change, dove into the role of actor-governor's spouse with relish. With a new infant daughter to care for, Fanny, born in 1867, Lucy's homemaking duties were as demanding as ever, but she still found time to assert her views on Lucifer's legislation programs and champion everything from prison reform to helping veterans orphans. To her, politics had become the family business. It had been she had gone Lucifer into it all in the first place, and she continued to look upon his career as partly hers. When the couple tried to retire from politic life after 2 terms in the governor's mansion, they only felt bored. Lucifer got elected to a 3rd term in 1875, setting himself up for a presidential win. He won the presidential race the following year. Well, sort of. The election of 1876 between Hayes and Democratic opponent Samuel Tilden was too close to call at first, requiring a congregational appointed committee to sort things out. They eventually went to Hayes, though the popular vote had barely gone to Tilden. As if to ease national tensions over the election, Roosevelt promised in his inaugural address to limit himself to a single term. Many of those who listened to him in the audience, however, had come to see his wife. Suffragists and temperance devotees, they looked upon the mildly adorned woman who sat next to Roosevelt on that afternoon as the woman of the hour, a fellow fighter and the treasure of progress who could finally make a difference from her perch in the White House. Many of them would be sorely disappointed. Liz Hayes was the first presidential spouse to have a college degree and had attracted attention for her work in human welfare causes, but there was another side to her as well. The severe Methodist who looked down upon anything that might smack of immodest behavior. She dressed the part, wearing her hair in a simple bun, doing without jewelry, and covering her décolleté with a lace. It was a manifestation of her concern for propriety. Try as they might, neither the suffragettes or the temperance union could get the First Lady to officially join their causes or publicly espouse their agenda. She sided with her husband on the subject of giving women the vote. Education and a career were fine, but the political decision-making was, as far as Lucy was concerned, the promise of men. And while seeing Rutherford wearing a dry White House, Lucy stopped short of preaching to others about their drinking house. Individual choice, and that was that. Nevertheless, those Americans of evangelical bent thought she was the best thing since the King James Bible. And for good reason. In addition to banning alcohol of every sort from the exemption mansion, Lucy and Rutherford prayed. They also sang gospel hymns every night. They were pious, to be sure, and lots of people likened them to a couple of washcloths come to wipe the sinful residue from previous administrations who soiled the White House with booze, vanity, and worse. Now that Lucy did entertain, with the help of family members, notably Roosevelt's niece Emily Platt, the First Lady oversaw an ambitious social schedule, and she still managed to find time to visit educational institutions, preaching the value of school for both sexes, and to accompany the president on tours of the country that offer average Americans a look at their first couple. Having completed Roosevelt's promised single term, the Hayes returned to Ohio, where Lucy divided time between church, family, and being president of the Women's Home Missionary Society. For much of her adult life, she has suffered from headaches and rheumatism. At times not exaggerated. She soldiered on despite the pain until her death in 1889. Though she had intelligence, grace, and a big heart, it was Lucy's teetotaling that posterity remembers most. The portrait of her that hangs in the White House was commissioned toward the end of her First Lady days by none other than a Women's Christian Temperance Union. Please subscribe, like, and comment on the video down below. And if you're on YouTube, please ring that bell notification so you can know when I upload. And if you're on TikTok, please like and follow my videos. And please pay for something in my eBay and or Mercari, okay? Bye.